Give it a couple more minutes. I guess it's not that surprising. We have low attendance on a holiday week. The week is shorter, but the work is exactly the same amount. So I'm sure people are very, very busy. Welcome in, Kelly. How are you? Okay. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. A couple of things before we jump in. Today's topic is going to be managing memberships. So that's what we're going to cover today. However, last week we ran out of time and there was like one area that we didn't touch upon last week that I wanted to check in with you guys to see if it's kind of worth talking about, and that's forms. Um, how are we as a group on forms? Are we using them? Do we kind of understand how they work? Do we need to review forms? Does anybody have any questions around forms? I want to be sure if it's valuable to cover it, we do, but if it's not valuable to cover it, then we can just jump into membership. So for the crew, forms wise, how are we feeling?
Since nobody else is talking, I will. We've attempted to use them, but I think there's a big um, issue with trying to get the field guys to get on board with using them. Right now, like I spent a long time developing a very robust form using
Sure.
the ServiceTitan's procedure stuff, and we will go out to a home. We'll do like a multi point water test, and I made it so they were able to put all the information in there, and then when they're finished their job, they could just have that attached and send it right off to the customer, so they had a copy of it.
Yeah.
But our guys who are young
Mhm.
still want to do paper to pencil, or well, yeah, pencil to paper, and physically do that. And we also see the advantages to doing that, where people actually see them as they're writing it out, and they can explain what it is that they're doing and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
I'm not sure what we can do to make the process easier or better.
Yeah, yeah. So my question actually was going to be when you mentioned you built it out was the previous form, pencil and paper. Because I think that's I mean, regardless, and I'm the same way. If you're used to writing it out, like it is quicker to write it out versus fill it out on a form, particularly if there's any kind of typing involved. Now, if it's you have it set up so like they're doing the stoplights or they're clicking from drop downs or whatever, that's kind of like one thing. But if there's areas where they have to type in descriptions of things they've observed, etc., I can understand how that could slow them down. Um, there's a couple of ways to approach this. The first way is to lean into kind of what they are doing currently, which is the pencil and paper. Obviously, they can leave that particular form behind with the customer. They have a physical copy of it. And if you really wanted to, you could have them take a picture of the form attached to the job, and at least you guys have record of what was on that form on the job. One of the downsides of doing it that way, however, is that you would have to actually go into a job and review the form to actually get the data that's on the form versus if you fill it out within a form on a form with ServiceTitan, you could even report on those forms. So if there's data collection that's being if there's data being collected on those forms, like a specific data point that you just want to see largely like across all the jobs that we filled this form out on, like what does this data point look like for everybody? Then you could do that. Now, if you really want to try to drive behaviors and try to get the guys to kind of really fill out the form, there are some settings that I can talk about to kind of force it a little bit. But I'm curious for you, John, these forms that they fill out, are there very specific jobs or job types that they're filling it out on, or is this just kind of like if we're going out to a customer's home, like we try to fill out this form, we try to do this inspection?
Um, our procedure is that when we go out to a person's home, we're supposed to always do what we call a 4-point water test. So we
Okay,
test for 4 different things, and they're supposed to do it on all of their visits, unless it's like we were just out like the week prior.
sure.
Unless we're there to fix something that we need to get another test result from. It's just like a added benefit to the customer. But yeah, the I'm glad to hear that there's that whole reporting side of it because that might actually sell it to the team to say this
Yeah.
is the reason we have to do it. Because the other side that we have is when they do the paper and pencil, is that some of our guys have terrible penmanship and somebody has to uh,
Decipher.
type it up and they're like, I don't even know what the name of the street is. It looks like it's
Oh,
written in a different language. So um,
okay.
that's the only reason I was thinking would be a benefit. But if we're able to say, oh, all the homes in this area, we're seeing these results, then we can do another campaign to send out stuff saying, hey, your neighbors have all been having these problems. Would you like us to come and check this out? So
Yeah, let's have a quick look at kind of how we can pull forms and like form fill outs and reporting. And then I'll go over kind of those settings that I talked about that might help kind of drive the behaviors that you're looking to see. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here.
To piggyback back off of that just real quick. So would that be with the forms? We could even use that to say, so we go out and do a 4-point test, and now is there a way that we could run a report that would show how many of those that we run a 4-point test convert over to a lead or convert over to like a sold estimate?
Yeah, let's go in and have a look and see kind of what that form template includes. Because I'm not sure, but we're going to discover that right now.
All
So
right, cool. Thank you.
yeah, I'm in reports. Okay, so we're looking for form submissions is the template. Okay, so I'm going to create a report. And just kind of as like a quick primer on if you have the ability to create reports, when you're coming in and creating reports and it's asking you like things like choose a report type, I always say just choose all. I couldn't tell you what these filters 100% do because I never use them. I just say give me all. But the report template that we're looking for is going to be form submissions. Now we also have forms. So the quick difference between these two is if we're selecting forms as kind of like our report template we want to build our report on. Forms is going to be each row represents a completed or saved form. Click on the form ID to view the form in a separate tab. And then form submissions is going to allow you to report on native ServiceTitan forms. Again, each row represents a completed or saved form submission. I would use forms. This is related to our old way of doing forms in ServiceTitan. So we're just going to go ahead and use the forms tab. And so when we are here, these are like the different data points and columns that you can include in that form. So we're going to see form ID, state, name, assigned to, who completed it, etc. If we come down here, we can pull in customer details, location details. So the address that you were talking about not being super legible, like it's just going to pull the address from the job. And then looking at form submissions, again, we're going to come in here and see form ID, who completed it, etc. Again, we can pull in the form name, which I think is very helpful. If it's called like a 4-point test, then you can know exactly which form you want to report on. Again, customer and location details can be pulled in here as well. So I'm just going to hit next just to kind of form test. I actually don't know if I have any form fill outs in my account. I guess we're going to learn today. I'm just going to hit new report. And I actually do want to pull in form names. And let's just run it to see. Last year. Form name. Oh, okay. So you can select on specific form name here. and hit run report. Yeah, so I would highly recommend going in, playing with the data points that you guys can pull in specifically to see kind of what information you can pull in. But I would say this is one of the big kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Benefits of having your forms filled out in ServiceTitan. Now, if we really want to kind of get people to do it because they're not currently doing it, they're not used to it. Obviously, they're going to be slow at it at the beginning because it's new. And they're going to be quicker at filling out that paper version because that is the one that they're used to. But if we really want to be sure they're doing it, if we come into our settings here, the first thing I'm going to go to is just the forms settings here in ServiceTitan. And I'm just going to click into one of these that I have just created in here. So when it comes to the actual questions or the sections that you have filled in your form, obviously, if you guys pull in job info at the top, these are just kind of like tokens that say they just pull from the current job's information, so they do not have to fill it out themselves. So that saves them a little bit of time. So things like customer name, the service address, etc. And then when it comes to the actual questions that you guys put on your forms, you can make these required. And what we mean by required when we're setting a requirement on the individual like questions, that means that we do not consider this form filled out until this question is completed. And if you have a form on your job that is required to fill out and it's not completed, then ServiceTitan will not let them close out the job. Like they can't close it out. If they can't close it out, that means they can't get to their next job. So that's like one area that you can put a form requirement. Like, here's the form you need to fill out. All of the questions that we mark as required, you have to answer in order to move forward. Now, you don't have to make every question required. So if there are questions on your forms where it's just like, it isn't relevant every time we fill it out, so we're not going to mark it as a requirement, that's fine. But the nice thing about this is you can go in by question and say, if you're filling out this form, you have to answer this question or you don't, depending on the form. So that's like one area to look at when we're talking about requirements. And again, this is if the form is in ServiceTitan, you have that form set as a required form. When they actually open it, they also have to fill out required questions. So that's one area. And then the second area I wanted to kind of highlight are triggers. And ooh, not to remember where these live. Hang on one second. Help me, ServiceTitan.
I don't know if it's what you're looking for, but I know like in forms, there's a column for trigger, and if you like cover over,
Right
you can
there.
add a trigger.
There it is in front of my face. Oh gosh. Can you tell this used to live in a different place before I came back to ServiceTitan? Okay, it's right there in front of my nose. This is where you can go in and actually make like the universal like requirement for on the actual form. So like I mentioned, like you go in and you edit it and you make individual um, questions on that form required. That means that they open that form in order to actually successfully complete it. It has to, answer those questions. But if you want to say like you have to open this form and you have to answer these questions in order to move on, that's where you add the trigger here on the form. So if you hit add trigger, it's going to select, the form type. You can set these triggers up. This is why I asked the question, like, is it on every job? Is it on only some? This is where you can kind of set, okay, where do we want this requirement to live? So do we only want this requirement to live on jobs under certain business units? So if you're assigned a job with this business unit, they must fill out this form. Or by job type. If they're assigned a job with this job type, they must fill out this form. Or customer type, residential versus commercial. You can also have it so it pops up in their mobile app to say, hey, like you need to fill out this form. There's 5 options here. So when they hit the arrive button, ServiceTitan can have a pop-up that says fill out this form. When they hit the invoice button, when they hit the closeout button, if they, sell work to a customer, etc. So you guys can kind of determine at what point in the process do you want a trigger to pop up that says you have a form you need to fill out. I think the most common is probably at the arrive button, like when you get on the job, but there's a couple other options as well. You can also have it, triggered so that like if there's a specific service or equipment that's added to an invoice, you can have a form again trigger between values, etc. But what I really want to talk about is this required right here. So this is going to be the like you have to fill out this form. You have to fill out this form to close out your job. And it says must complete form at the time of trigger. So that's that event that we talked about up here. Most people don't do this, but if you have, an arrival checklist is the example I have today. This option says you have to fill out this form at this very moment. You can't bypass it and come back to it later in the job. So if you want them to have the flexibility to go into that form when they need to, I would not recommend selecting that. But this is going to be that requirement I mentioned. Like they cannot close out their form until they fill out the job. So if this is something like you train them on it, you get them prepared mentally for it, like this is where you're going to fill out this form from now on, then you can go in and turn on that requirement and it's just going to force them to do it. So those are kind of like the two things. I think the two biggest things that are beneficial when it comes to forms and ServiceTitan is the data component of it and also the settings. You can kind of force certain behaviors for these forms if you need to. Okay, so that's going to be forms. Let's go ahead and move into memberships because I want to be sure we have time to talk through those. But before we get into kind of what I have on my agenda, I want to hear from you guys if you're using memberships in ServiceTitan and kind of roughly what you offer to your customers and how you guys handle billing for that. So do you do monthly billing? Do you do yearly billing? Do they have to renew? Are they ongoing? I'm curious if you guys are using memberships, kind of what are you offering your customers?
I'm interested in this part because we tried to do memberships and I watched like a class on it,
Uh-huh.
and we ended up doing service agreements, but they're still not 100%. And I know like service agreements, I think were more for commercial, but we ended up kind of making it work for what we needed. But
Mhm.
I still want to know kind of what memberships are, because basically with the service agreements, what we're doing is it's if we go to do service, and let's say we're doing a water treatment, we go 3 times a year, you get X amount of salt, you get like whatever it includes, and then we bill them monthly is what we're doing.
Mhm.
And this goes ongoing until they cancel basically.
Okay.
But I've heard that the membership would be the actual way to go, not the service agreement. So I'm interested.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for probably for you guys with the service agreements is those visits, those 3 a year that they get. Like you have to, in memberships, you can set those up as recurring. Like you can say, this is the visit and we want it to happen X number of times. Whereas in service agreements, you actually have to set up each of those visits individually, which frankly is a bit annoying. So we'll talk about that. And then for small town drain, Kelly or Angel, what about you guys? Do you guys offer any kind of maintenance plan, membership plan to your customers?
We don't.
Okay.
Um, we're typically sewers and drains, and there it's not like we have a service that we've thought about it, we've toyed with it, we just haven't come up with a good reason to offer them.
Okay, cool. Well, this is kind of a good kind of introduction into what memberships are. That way, if you guys do decide, you kind of know the tool that's available if you ultimately want to offer those. So it'd be kind of a good educational moment. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the kind of building blocks of a membership. That way we all kind of know what goes into setting one up. I am not going to set one up today because I think that's going to take a lot of time. And there's a lot of really good resources at ServiceTitan, and also the setup wizard in ServiceTitan is pretty good. So I'm not going to set one up actually, but I do want to talk about kind of what goes into the setup. And honestly, the best way to get a good idea of what goes into the setup and if you have them set up it correctly in ServiceTitan is actually using Titan Advisor. So I'm going to move actually over to a different account because my demo account does not have Titan Advisor. So I'm going to go into an account that does. We're going to share the screen here. Okay. And then I'm going to come up here to this little kind of rocket icon. This is where Titan Advisor lives. Now, if you're not familiar with Titan Advisor is just kind of like a tool within your account that measures your utilization of ServiceTitan. So it looks at different areas of ServiceTitan. Are you using it? How are you using it? It gives you points, etc. Our Ember program goes very, very deep into Titan Advisor. So if you're curious about that. But what's nice about it too is because it's a utilization tool, you guys can come in here and check, how we're using certain features in ServiceTitan. And one of those that we're going to use today is memberships. So I'm actually going to go over to lead generation. I want to go to acceleration, and then we want to do, I think, boost membership sales. So like I said, this is a really great way to come in and see like what goes into the setup and do we have it set up properly, because it tells you right here in this little pop-up what to set up to use memberships. So there's kind of like 7 areas that need to be considered. We need to have some tags for memberships that lets us know when a membership is sold to a customer. It'll tag that customer so you guys can easily see like, hey, they have our maintenance plan or our membership plan. We need to create a whole bunch of price book items. So the sales task, we need to set our membership discounts if those exist. If we're going to renew, so make our renewal task, how we're going to bill them. So this is a really great tool. As you guys consider using memberships, setting them up, coming in here to Titan Advisor and looking at boost membership sales, it will let you know where you still have areas that you need to set up and where you've completed the setup for memberships. Now for Jordan and John, do you guys, when you're, you said you have like ongoing, so they're kind of like Netflix, I imagine they're billed monthly and then they have to cancel. From an accounting perspective, do you guys know if you are doing deferred revenue or not?
I think we're doing the one I think that captures it right away, not.
Okay, so you're recognizing revenue right away. Okay, perfect. Um, okay, so I'm going to go into the membership settings. Like I said, we're not going to set one up from scratch today, but we are going to look at one that's already set up. Specifically, I want to get into, the visits, what we call recurring services for memberships, and how those can be set up and automated on the membership setting. So we're going to go up here into our settings here. We're just going to search for memberships, and we're just going to hop into membership types. So you guys can create as many as you would like. What's nice about the membership setup now is that you can have multiple billing and durations. So if you like to have a monthly ongoing, then you can have obviously monthly ongoing as an option, but you guys can also see there are different billing and duration options you can offer to your customers if it makes sense. So you can have one that's called upfront, where they pay everything upfront and they just get that membership for 12 months. You can do monthly for 12 months, 18 months, etc. So there's some flexibility around how you bill your customers and how long those memberships actually last. I'm going to use the Ignite membership point of sale, because that's the one where revenue is recognized right at the point of sale. Because if we get into deferred revenue and you're not using it, it's just a lot. It's a lot to look at. So we're not even going to touch that one today. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to basics so we can just see kind of what goes into the setup of a membership and what that means for your company. So obviously you're going to give it a name. That one's pretty straightforward. We're just going to move on from that. Those tags that I mentioned, this is the tag that will, show up on a customer's account when a membership is sold to them. So you guys can see pretty clearly when customers called in if they have a plan with you or not. Duration and billing. So this is going to be where you set up, how long is this membership going to last when we sell it to a customer, and then when are we actually going to bill them for it? We have multiple options set up here, but you can have it only set up so there's one option. The options for duration are going to be ongoing or fixed. Ongoing is that model that you guys use, Jordan and John, where it just goes until they call in and actively cancel. Fixed is going to be this option down here where you set an actual fixed expiration. And then the billing frequency is going to be, okay, how often are we going to actually send out a bill? How often do they need to pay us for this particular membership? Again, monthly is very, very common, but we do have options like upfront, every other month, quarterly, biannually, annually, etc. So if you do set up multiple frequencies at the time of the membership sale, it will ask you to choose which of these frequency, duration, billing combinations do you want to sell to this particular customer. All right. Also want to point out too that these particular, when we're setting up memberships, again, separate from service agreements, service agreements are kind of meant to be very specific to the customer that you are selling it to. Obviously, you can set it up so that it can kind of apply across the board to any customer you sell it to, but memberships really are set up to be like, this is the plan, this is what you get in the plan. There's very little room for, customization. What you set up here is what the customer gets. Makes it a little simpler. Next, we're going to get into like discounts. And this I know is really common on like the HVAC side, especially, but if there are discounts that come with services you provide, if they have a membership, you can set those up here. You can do it across the board. You can do it by business unit. You can do it by price book category. So if you do want to, provide that discount to your customer for your services, this is where you can establish those. And then this is the big one I want to point out, is locations. So by default, and what ServiceTitan always recommends when we're setting this up is only apply a membership to a single location. And the reason we do this is because those 3 visits, for example, that you guys offer to a customer, if you sell a membership and you have it applying to, let's say, all locations that the customer has, so maybe they have 2 houses, the discounts they get from a membership would apply to any jobs at those 2 houses, but the visits that they get for this membership are not going to double just because there's 2 locations. It's only going to remain the number of visits you set up for this membership. So for example, 3, and now you're trying to kind of spread 3 visits across 2 locations, and that's not what we want. So we always recommend, especially if there are visits involved, to set this at a single location. And if a customer has multiple locations that they want a membership for, then you can just sell them individually to each location. Okay, moving on to the next thing, billing. So this is going to be where you would create your prices for your membership. So how much are you going to charge them for the membership? There's a few questions that it's going to ask you. Do you want to use the membership pricing table to set prices on invoice and estimates? We're going to say yes. That allows us to set our pricing down here. Do you sell your membership for the same amount that you bill a membership? Meaning, when you guys sell a membership to a customer, do they have to pay essentially that first month up front? If the answer is yes, then it's going to ask you to put a sale price. If the answer is no, then it's going to ask you to put a sale price and a different billing price. So if you sell it for $10, but you bill monthly for $20, it allows you to set those 2 different prices. If it's the same no matter what, then whatever you put here is going to automatically update here. And then if you have renewals, which if you don't have renewals, this question is not relevant, but if you do have renewals, is the membership that you're renewing into the same price as the membership that you sold them previously? All right.
Well, before
Moving
you jump away from that, um, one of the things we were uh, considering was doing like a as a selling tool. Our salesperson could go out and say, "Hey, if you decide you want to move forward with this installation today, I can
on.
offer you 1 year free of our membership plan."
Mhm.
So is that where we would end up doing something like that? So you could do the 1 year would be free, and then so do you renew for the same price? You would say no, and then you could say then it would be $100.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And for those scenarios, like I would recommend when you're selling up a kind of duration and billing, I would set up a duration and billing option for 12 months, kind of like what we see here. And I would set the price for that particular option at 0. And then again, they can renew into monthly ongoing at the end of that month or at the end of that year, excuse me.
All right.
Yep. The next few the next few steps are really going to be guidance into making sure you have all of your price book items set up. So there's kind of a number of price book items that need to be set up for memberships. The first one is going to be that new sales task. So when a customer is new and getting that, that membership, there is a task that needs to be set up in your price book. This will walk you through setting that up. The next is going to be if you have a renewal billing option set up, a renewal task. If you only have monthly ongoing set up in your duration and billing, then it's not going to ask you to create a renewal for this. So it will just skip this step for you. And then the billing template. So this is going to ask you when you are doing that monthly billing, obviously ServiceTitan is going to generate an invoice every month for the billing. And this is ServiceTitan asking you to create the price book items and essentially building out that invoice template for those monthly bills. And then the next one is going to be kind of the recurrences. These are going to be the visits that are provided to your customers when they sign up for your membership. And the way that you guys can approach these visits is kind of up to you. For some people, they have very clear, like, for example, if we use the 3 visits that you guys mentioned, John and Jordan, if those are kind of 3 visits where you're essentially doing the exact same thing, you can create one existing service and then update it so it happens 3 times a year. Or you can create 3 separate services and update it so they each only happen once a year because you want to name them something different because what you're doing on those visits is different and you want to be clear when you're booking out those visits that, hey, like this is visit 1. We do specific things on visit 1. So how you guys want to approach how you set up your visits is kind of up to you. But if I hit create new service here, it's going to kind of ask us, okay, what service are we providing? What do these visits entail? So it's going to ask you to give it a name. We're just going to keep it very kind of generic today. So this is the visit's name. If you want to give it a different display name, you can. That's going to be customer facing. I can't think of like a specific reason why you would have an internal and external name, but you can have an internal and external name if you want. Tags. So if you want to apply a tag to a recurring service so that when it's booked, that tag we put on that job so the technician can see like, hey, we're doing this visit. You can apply a tag if you would like. And then the invoice template. So when we actually do this visit, obviously in ServiceTitan, you guys know any job that's booked out in ServiceTitan is going to come with its invoice. So if there's a specific invoice template you want to add to these recurring services, you can do so. Then it's going to ask you for the job type details. So like when we actually book out these visits, under what business unit do we want to book it under what job type do we want to book it under? Obviously, these can all be established when we actually book it out. but this allows you to set some defaults, saves a little bit of time when you're actually getting these visits scheduled. You don't have to go in and select a business unit and a job type, etc. every single time. You can just kind of set it here. And then we get into our scheduling settings. So it's going to ask you kind of the recurrence type, the recurrence interval, and the duration type. So the recurrence type is going to be the recurring cadence for when events will be generated. For seasonal events, these will be generated during specific months. For recurrence intervals, this is going to be how often is this recurring service performed? And then for duration type is, does this recurring service go on continuously? Is there a specific number of visits that are purchased by the customer? Now for duration type, if you're doing monthly ongoing, you always want that to be continuous. You set your recurrence type and your recurrence interval, and then you want that to just keep going. If you select a number of total visits, it's going to stop at after that number of visits, regardless. So if they have monthly and ongoing and they only get 3 visits, then like those are the 3 and they're not going to renew. Those are just the 3 that they get. So you can tell here it even gives you like a warning, like, hey, you want a continuous because you have an ongoing membership. You do not want to do number total visits. And then it did mention, like, if you select seasonal here, it will kind of give you months that you would like to get these visits done. So if we want to get April, May, and November, what will happen is when you sell this membership to a customer, their recurring visits are going to be kind of quote unquote, not scheduled per se, because you guys have to do the scheduling, as you guys know. But ServiceTitan is going to assume that every customer is going to get in on January, May, and November. So when you guys are going into your follow-up tab and looking up for customers who need to get visits scheduled, they're only going to live in January, May, or November. And again, you can also do it so that you create one for each visit. If you're unsure about how the recurrences are going to work for you guys, or you think it would just be easier to say, we're going to just create each of these individual visits, and then make the recurrence very, very simple. They're just going to happen once a year, then you can do it that as well. But the big thing is going to be making sure that they're continuous so that ServiceTitan knows they're going to continue getting those visits every year until they cancel. And the last thing here is going to be that revenue recognition. For you guys, it's going to be point of sale. We won't get into deferred revenue right now because that is a whole other beast of setup. But point of sale is going to be the one where you recognize the revenue at the time of, we say sale, but really at the time of billing. So every month when you get a bill from a customer, that revenue is recognized. All right, that's going to be kind of what goes into the setup of the memberships. Like I said, these don't allow for a ton of customization. You can go in on a customer by customer basis and move their recurring visits around a little bit, and I can show you guys what that looks like here. But when you set these settings in the membership setup and you sell these memberships to a customer, the discounts, the recurring services, the billing, all that stuff is going to be the same across the board for every single one of your customers. So if you have a plan where there isn't a ton of customization, you just kind of get what you get, the membership is kind of the easiest way to do it, in that you just set it in the settings and then ServiceTitan takes it from there when you actually sell it to your customers. Okay, what questions do we have about the things that go into setting up a membership?
I have a couple of things, but the first one would be what preventative measures are there if somebody would be pretty savvy and said, well, if you're gonna bill me monthly, then how about I cancel it and then only activate it when I need to get my service done, and then cancel it the next month, and so they can get like they a third of the price.
Oh, I see. So like they call in and they're like, "Hey, I want a membership." They get a visit and then they cancel it and they call on and say, "Hey, I want a membership."
Yep.
And they okay. So anytime let me open up a new tab because I don't want to move away from this. Let me get a customer membership status active. Adam, do you have a lot of memberships? Okay. Anytime a customer calls in or activates a membership, obviously you guys can see it here under the membership tab, and you can see whether it's active or it's not. Could one of your office people go in and take an inactive membership and reactivate it? Yes, they could, but that does that's I don't know that we could like safeguard from that necessarily if they have their permission to do it. But they can see what most customers will do is if a customer calls in and cancels it and they want to have it back, they'll need to sell it to them fresh. So instead of taking an inactive membership and reactivating it, they keep that inactive one there and they just come up here and sell them a new one. That way there's a record of every time we sell a new customer or a customer a new membership, and it's just going to live here under the memberships as active and inactive. So even if these were showing as inactive, you would still see a list of every time a new membership was sold to this customer.
Okay.
So like it doesn't stop the customer from requesting it, but you guys can see record of it as long as you are selling every time a customer calls in and asks for one. Um, ServiceTitan will keep a record of that, and you can just see it every time they do it.
Okay. So we could
Yep.
probably make like our selling price what one visit costs. So that
Yep.
way, if they tried to do that, we're at least getting the full value of that visit, and then
Yep.
make the remainder two visits be split for whatever the yearly
Okay.
fee be.
Right. Split across the remaining
Yeah.
months. Yep.
That way we can fix the whole problem by doing that, and hopefully they
Yep.
would figure that out too.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you'll also be able to see like this too is going to be when they ultimately cancel or when it expires. But for you guys, it would be when they cancel. So you'll be able to see very clearly like how long did they have their last memberships activated? Like if it was for 2 months at a time, then obviously there's some behavior there that,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, the other thing is that, so um, the reason why our stuff's all been super complicated is that servicing a filter is a lot easier than servicing a neutralizer.
Mhm.
So it's like all these different visits would have different price points. So if we do like a membership, it's not one size fits all.
Mhm.
So if you have these situations where it's, oh, the person needs to service this one piece of equipment, and then this customer needs three pieces of equipment,
Mhm.
should there be three different memberships and they're basically subscribing to the different products that they have? Or is there a way to make it so that, oh, you're paying for this membership, but then you have to add this services to it, and then that dictates what the price is?
Yeah. So that depends on kind of like how much, visibility you guys want to see in your reporting for like how often you're selling these types of memberships. Like theoretically, when you sell a membership to a customer, let me sell one here just really quickly. We'll do whatever that is. Sure. When you sell a membership, obviously it's going to generate that sales, invoice with the sales task. If you wanted to at this point, you could update the price and update it to reflect, what the customer is getting. You do lose a little bit of visibility into what exactly they're getting, but at least you're charging them the appropriate amount. The other option that you guys can do is, like you said, create a different membership types for like the level of service that you guys see your customers get. That's another way. It's more work up front, but at least, once you have them set, it's very easy to sell them just based on the information the customer is providing you. And the third option is actually creating membership add-ons, which is something that you can create in your price book. And I will give some like resources for membership add-ons in our follow-up email too, so you guys can go back and reference this if it's something you want to utilize. But let me see if I have any set up in this price book here. My coworkers are funny. Okay. Let me go in and look at this add-on that we have set up in this price book. So when you create kind of membership add-ons, what you'll do is you guys decide, okay, like, do we want to do add-ons based on number of equipment or level of work that needs to be done? However you guys want to define like an add-on and how you will charge for an add-on. But you'll come into the price book, you'll create a service for it, you'll give it a description, obviously you'll give it a price, etc. If they want to do multiple quantities of this add-on to reflect number of pieces of equipment, etc., that can also be done. But here in the workflow tab, once you have decided kind of what that add-on is going to look like, over here in the workflow tab, you'll notice we have a number of options here. And this workflow tab is going to be some automations that you're telling ServiceTitan to do if this item is added to an invoice or an estimate. When it comes to membership add-ons, adjust the membership being sold with the following changes. So if I were to add this add-on to a membership invoice after I sell it, you could have this particular item add a new visit, so an extra visit. If this add-on is added, you can have it add additional tasks to the membership's billing template. So like we're doing extra equipment, we need to bill you monthly a little bit more. You can have it do that. Or you can have it add additional items to the actual recurring service invoice. So for you guys, if there are scenarios where, there would be times we need to bill more based on what the customer needs, add-ons might be the way to go. I think it requires a little extra training for everybody who sells, these membership plans. It requires a little more strategy for you guys to figure out how you want to define an add-on and how you want to price it. But instead of having to go in and build a new membership type every time you guys kind of discover a new way that you can sell a membership, you guys can just create an add-on instead. And that's just, you sell the membership, you go into your price book, you find these add-ons and you add the appropriate ones.
Yeah, I think that fixes everything right there.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot of work up front, but then we're just, oh, you've got these 12 pieces of equipment, so if you'd like us to service all of them, this is what it would end up being.
Exactly. Like here's an equipment add-on in quantity 12. If you need to update the price, you can, but it's a little, it simplifies that sales process. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And I will definitely add a resource to kind of go over this because if you guys want to go in and play around, you'll have like a resource to reference. Yeah. All right. What other questions do we have regarding membership setup? Okay, cool. The last thing I want to go over now is just kind of like managing memberships, mainly around visits. That's the big one. But kind of where you would go to make sure those visits are being booked, and also a few other helpful kind of settings that I want to highlight that could also help with that process as well. One of the biggest challenges I'm sure you guys know is actually getting customers to get these services booked, whether that be having to outbound call them to get them booked and they're ghosting you, or scheduling is just really challenging. So want to talk about kind of where all the follow-up information lives and a few things that might help get those services actually done. So if you're already using service agreements, this is actually very, very similar to visits for service agreements. Everything lives up here in the follow-up tab. And recurring service events is where we will go to see kind of who has a visit that needs to be booked out. So up here at the top, I think by default, it's going to show you roughly a month of visits that need to be booked. This can obviously be changed to this week, next month, etc., depending on how you guys like to tackle getting these on the schedule. You can also filter by recurring service type. So this is going to be the different visits that you guys set up on your membership settings. Like if we're looking to really target one type of visit to get those scheduled for the next month, then you can do so. Preferred technician, customer zip codes, like if you're trying to do a specific area, etc. This is all up here to help you kind of whittle down this particular list. Now, when we're looking at these actual visits that need to be scheduled out, over here at the very right, this actions drop down. You can either book this event, and that's just going to take you through the normal job booking process. So that's going to get this particular visit on the schedule. You can also dismiss events if you would like. So if the customer wants to bypass it, skip it, or you guys have a process in place where once we've reached out to them 10 billion times and they don't answer, we're just going to assume they don't want this visit. You can dismiss them if you need to. It will remove it from your follow-up screen here, so you don't continue to follow up with this customer. However, you can still go to the customer's like profile and find this visit, and you can still book this visit from the customer profile if they, decide to call in a month later. But all that really does by dismissing it is kind of get rid of it from your follow-up screen. And then, of course, by clicking on the actual visit, what it's going to do is it's just going to open up kind of, well, actually, will it? Yes, there we go. It'll open up your recurring service agreement visits like settings. So like I mentioned, there isn't like a ton of really easy ways to customize when these visits happen for your customer. However, if you do want to go in and like edit this particular visit and this particular visit only, you can do so. Not very many people do it. The whole point of setting up memberships is to like set it and forget it so you don't have to mess with this level of customization. But I do like to point out that if on this particular visit you need to change anything from the name, the business unit, etc., you can do so. Okay. Now when we hit book event, it's going to bring us into that normal like customer booking screen, job booking. You put in the job type in the business unit, or if you guys have set this on the actual recurring service level, then it will automatically put that information in for you. And then the remaining booking process is kind of exactly the same. You just book it into a job, and then that visit, once it's booked, will remove itself from the follow-up tab, and you guys don't need to follow up with that particular customer on this visit any longer. And then once this job is actually completed in ServiceTitan, it will show on the customer's profile that their visit is completed. They got it done. We don't owe them this visit anymore, etc. Okay, so that's going to be the follow-up tab. That's where all these visits exist. That's where they live. It's how we know that we still owe it to them. A couple other things I always like to point out with regards to the visits that are owed to a customer. One thing I like to highlight is on the call booking screen, and we're going to use Jess here as our example because he has a ton of visits. But let's say Jess calls in. Jess wants to get some unrelated work done, unrelated to the maintenance visits that he has. Maybe he has a problem, needs somebody out, it's an emergency, etc. And Jess calls in, and we pull up Jess's account, and you'll notice right here there are, wow, he has a lot. That's not normal. But if the customer has recurring service events that are owed to them, ServiceTitan will let them know or whoever's booking this job know that, hey, he has a visit that we owe him. You can click on use recurring visit. It will let you know when that visit is roughly due. And if it makes sense, while we're going out to this customer to address whatever issue they called in about, we go ahead and get their maintenance visit done. We can select it and hit continue. And it will A, let the technician know that we have a visit that needs to be completed. And B, once we book out this emergency repair quick service job and it's completed, not only will this job be completed, but ServiceTitan will also mark this particular membership visit as completed as well. So it allows you guys to kind of kill two birds with one stone. If the customer is already talking to you, instead of waiting till next week to follow up with them to get a visit done, why not just go ahead and get it completed while we're already out there? So that's helpful. Always like to point that out. Saves a little bit of time, saves a truck roll, and it's a good customer experience just to go ahead and get her done. Get her done. Wow. That's a throwback to a comedy special I haven't seen in a long time. Okay, so that's going to be the last of, I think, kind of like the follow-ups. Do we have any questions with regards to anything we talked about today? Because we're at time. So forms, membership setup, managing those recurring visits, where to look if we need to like book one and a customer's on the phone with us right now, etc.
No, everything was good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, in my follow-up email, this one will probably include the most resources because memberships, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of different ways that you guys can approach memberships. I'll be sure to include not only membership setup, but some like price book stuff too, like those add-ons. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll be sure to just include anything I think would be helpful for you guys when you start playing around with using memberships instead of service agreements. And then I'll also include some stuff about forms since we did talk about that. So some resources reminding you guys of different, settings you can have on a form. I'll also send over a video on conditional logic forms. If that's something you guys have access to, learn a little bit more about that. But yeah, I'll send all that over no later than tomorrow because I'll be off on Thursday and Friday. So keep an eye out on that. And then next week is going to be our last session together in Ignite. So that's pretty sad. But next week we're going to be talking about, we call it accounting. Really, this is going to be invoicing related stuff. I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to be giving advice that like a CPA would advise. But we are going to be talking about things like, managing our invoices, managing AR, payment collections, reviewing, how we can email all those documents out to our customers, etc. So how in ServiceTitan we prep all of the documentation that needs to be prepped in order to be essentially exported out of ServiceTitan into our financial software. So that's going to be the topic for next week. Great way to end a session is to talk money. So that's what we're going to be doing. All right. That's everything I have. Anybody have any last minute questions before I let you guys go?
Not here.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I know it was a light attendance today, but I really appreciate you guys giving me your time. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your week and a good holiday weekend. I hope it's fun and safe for you guys.
You as well.
Thank you, too.
Yep.
Bye.